Again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. As many of you know, I'm Jennifer Senna with Visit Lauderdale. Welcome to the Meeting Professionals Wellness Seminar Series. We're really excited to get this started. And I'm going to start with a video. It's a 30-second video, so it's going to be short and sweet. And start that. So that's our new video, our new tagline, everyone under the sun, and I hope it did give you some good images of Greater Fort Lauderdale and the sun and the beach. But we are open for business with all the safety protocols. Our hotels and businesses look forward to welcoming you very soon, and hopefully everyone will get to travel sooner than we all expect. Oops, let me just go to the next one. So our interest in health and well-being started way before the pandemic. These are just some images of some of the events that Agnes Zaransky and I did. The first one on the left is a spin class that we did, and I know, Tina, you participated on that one, but we did that November of last year. And then on the right side is an image of the Northeast Helms-Briscoe team, and we did journaling and meditation with them. So that was fun. So again, who would have thought 2 weeks later we were going to be under, a stay-at-home order? So what we did and we decided to do was hold some other wellness series during the beginning of the pandemic. And one was the Meditation Mondays and the other was Workout Wednesdays. And doing that, people were so excited to be able to get together. So we wanted to stay connected with our clients in different ways. And the one that we're doing currently is, let me just go to my next screen. Okay, I guess it's not going to work. There we go. Oh, let me back up. So what we're doing now, and it's just a reminder for everyone, we are doing live virtual site inspections with our hotels. The next one that's happening is this Wednesday with the Renaissance Fort Lauderdale Cruise Port. And then the week after, we're doing the Diplomat. So just wanted to tell you guys about those. And I am going to introduce our speaker. And I don't know why. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to introduce our speaker and tell you a little bit of how all of this came about. So because of the wellness series that we were already conducting, I decided that I was going to call Jim to help me out with my podcast, not knowing that he and I had similar backgrounds with some cardiac issues, and I don't want to give anything away. Jim will definitely go into that, but that was just a way to say, hey, you know what, this new world that we're living in, this virtual world, we all need to take care of ourselves. We're all working from home. So we decided to do a 5-week series. And I'm going to just read to you Jim Spellos' background so you can understand who he is. And I know a lot of people are familiar with him already, but Jim is the president of Meeting You, whose mission is to help people become more productive and comfortable with technology. Jim delivers over 150 keynote and educational seminars annually on how technology worked and use technology more efficiently. In 2015, Jim was named one of the meeting industry's trendsetters by Meetings Focus magazine. He was a faculty member at NYU, teaching the School of Professional and Continuing Studies since 1990. He has been honored with both their Service for Teaching Excellence and their Outstanding Service Award. Jim in 2014 joined the board of directors of Rock and Rap Wrap It Up, Rock and Wrap It Up, an anti-poverty hunger think tank which supports over 43,000 agencies in North America. And Jim, thank you so much for joining us. I will give you the capability to share your slide and we can get started.
Jennifer, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. And the first question I have for you is, can you see the real me? I mean, can you? I mean, it's just a couple of images to show, really, to start this whole conversation up, because change is something that is pretty amazing when you look at it in retrospect. I could call that my two gerbil period, because it looks like I had two gerbils stuffed in each cheek, because I never been that heavy, right? Or maybe so. And then again, things change, and the people who know me will really appreciate the shirt that I'm wearing there. But it isn't completely true. Well, it's still, that's a journey, and unfortunately, that journey had a couple of words precipitated with it. The words were, "Do you want the drug?" Now, let's be honest. I'd heard those words before. Freshman year of college clearly comes to mind, but that's another story entirely. At this point, though, we really want to go back to a specific date, and that's December 19th. And I was getting ready to do work for my favorite charity organization, Rock and Wrap It Up. We were getting ready for our drive to wrap presents for needy kids. I'd actually finished all my Christmas wrapping on that morning, which I never do more than like 2 hours before Christmas. And so I decided to drive out, and that's actually my car in the driveway. And you'll understand that this was a complete challenge because I kind of felt weird the minute I got into my car, and made it back through that fine. And when I realized a half block later that I didn't have control of the right side of my body. You see, what happened is I had a stroke, an ischemic stroke, which took away my right arm, my right leg. And if we had a lot of time, we'd get into the challenge of now trying to stop the car heading for an intersection with cars coming in both areas. But what ultimately occurred is we got to, because I did have the capability to reach out to my wife and get to 911, get to the hospital, which happened to be one of the top stroke recovery hospitals in this area. They immediately identified it, and they asked me the question again. And the drug was called TPA, tissue plasminogen activator. And what essentially that does for somebody who has a stroke is it dissolves the blood clot in your brain, which is a good thing. So we asked them, does this drug work? And Dr. said, honestly, said, well, 40% of the people, it'll do exactly what it's supposed to do. It'll make sure the stroke doesn't carry out to any other part of the body. For 50% of the people, it acts essentially like a placebo. Nothing happens. Now, I might have had a stroke, but I still understaff, and there was 10% missing there. I said, what happens to the other 10% of the people? And they say, well, you'll hemorrhage immediately and die within a couple of minutes. Do you want the drug? At age 57, you're not expecting to have conversations like that, especially when it came out of the blue entirely. But we did take the drug, and it did work. I wasn't going anywhere because I didn't have any part of my body whatsoever. They put me in a ICU for a number of days. They gave me a bandage that said fall risk, which my family found very funny because they knew I should have had that all my life, but now I had it officially from the hospital. So I probably never took it off, actually. Saw the neurologist, and he goes, look, here's an image of the brain, and here's your brain. The problem is, Jim, that your brain now doesn't work in a certain place because you had this atherosclerosis, and the stroke stopped blood from getting there, which is why I couldn't walk, which is why I couldn't use the right side of my body for a while, and had a pretty extensive rehab. But a couple of things happened during that time that really made me understand a lot of stuff that's important. First of all, we met my cardiologist, who we'll hear about more later, but he had the one-liner of the year. As he's standing, introducing himself and trying to talk about it, he said, you need to get rid of that abdominal adiposity. And I looked at my wife, and she looked at the nurse, and she looked at me, and we go, what is he? Oh, fat stomach. He just called me fat, didn't he? Yeah, he did. But he said, part of this issue and part of any possible recurrence of this, which is very likely, is that you need to get rid of that. So it became clear what I had to do, especially because I still love what we do in this industry. And my new mantra became exceptionally clear. I had to get healthy, but I also had to be prepared. Now, many of you know me that I've been teaching technology in this industry for 30 years, but I felt completely unprepared because I didn't have a single tool on my phone that really could have prepared me for the crisis. And if I had a stroke that was even worse than what I had, they actually called my stroke a lucky stroke, which don't believe them entirely. There's no such thing as a lucky stroke. But indeed, in this case, it was, because I was able to speak. I was able to use one of my arms to be able to reach out. But what if? It's a huge what if. So I now have to share with you, because it is my mission to do so, two things. I want to talk about how you can be prepared with your technology, and I want you to understand the get healthy approach. I know Liz during the next couple of weeks is going to do an amazing job of talking about different components, but let's first talk about something called ICE. It stands for in case of emergency, and most phones have some sort of functionality. The challenge is if you have information on your phone regarding your health and maybe medications you're taking or anything that the doctors need to know about, and something happens to you and clearly your phone has a lock screen, they're not going to be able to get to it unless you have accessible app information. And that's where stuff like this really matters. Now, you have options, and I'm going to go through this really quickly, but this is what I want you to know. If you want a copy of this entire presentation, just send me a note. I will send you to you right away so you can check out these tools, because it's really, really important. Regarding iPhone, Android, it's in different locations. There are different tools. Clearly, the iPhone has the Apple Health, which is great, but I can't assume that you all have an updated version of a phone to have the Apple Health. So let's look at very quickly what you can do. Android phone, you get an app such as Medical ID, you go to the App Store, you get it there, you allow it, once you fill the profile in, to show a widget for quick access to information. You fill in the information that's there. Needs permission, medical ID has not been enabled, need to enable it. It's a 5-10 minute process. Ultimately, you'll even see a video to make sure you're clear how to get that on top of the lock screen, which means if EMS finds you, if something happens to you, they can get all that information without having to waste precious time to be able to find how to get into your phone. If you're on an Apple phone, well, you have different options there. The ICE standard in case of emergency is one. I have this for my iPad since I do run both Android and I, so I have all my information that's there. I'm able to then quickly create a lock screen image and then move the app to the top left corner of the first screen. Always recommended. A little known fact here is that if they get in your phone, they're going to look at the top left corner for any in case of emergency information once they get past the lock screen. So again, one more time on what I went through very quickly. You download the appropriate app, or in the case of Apple Health, you fill that out completely. You then update the information, and then you put it on the lock screen. And this is a dull process, but trust me, it's anything but dull in terms of the safety that is going to create. Angers me somewhat that Apple and Samsung keep moving the emergency settings around, but you do have panic buttons on your phones too. You have to be careful because sometimes you hit them accidentally and you scare the you-know-what out of the people that are attached to that emergency notification. But with Android, you go into settings, privacy and emergency, or it could be privacy and safety, or it could be advanced features because they change it each time. But what you're looking for there is to send SOS messages. And by hitting the power button quickly 3 times, you can send a quick note out to your loved ones in case you are in an emergency situation. iPhone, similar setup. In the settings area, this time you press the sleep wake button 5 times and it will send out the emergency notification. And if those don't work, if you can't find them, just download an app, the red panic button. Yes, that's the name of the app that you can put on the front of your phone in case something happens. We're just getting you to be prepared. Now, I know you will not have a lot of time right now to go through this, but after the session, do me a favor. It's been since the day I've been laying down in intensive care, looking at my phone saying, I wasn't ready for this. One of my missions in life is to make sure that I share this with as many people as possible. So find those settings. In fact, find them for your parents, find them for your kids, and make sure it's all set up properly. By the way, if you do have Alexa or Google Home, and they might start talking in the background, if they do, just ignore them. But you can't technically use them to call 911. Federal regulations do not allow that. However, there's workarounds, and the workaround is to find some sort of a tool. One such tool is Ask My Buddy, which actually can create a buddy network that you can speak to your voice device and have it send out notification to a series of people if you need to let them know something happened. There are tools available. We need to make sure that they're on our devices, and hopefully you never have to use them. In fact, when we talk about apps, to have the first aid app by the Red Cross will give you a litany of what to do in case you or someone you love has some sort of emergency situation while you're waiting for emergency services or getting the person to the hospital. You know how to treat it to help with the time management to get them there as safely as possible. A tool such as Life 360 or Glimpse allows you to keep connected at all times with family and friends, especially with family. And I know, especially for someone who talks about security in technology a lot, the fact that now I have my location always on might not be the most secure thing to do. But, once you have a friggin' stroke, you sort of throw away a little bit of that security to know that if something happens, my wife always knows exactly where I am. And when we get back out doing sports and your kids are playing sports, there's an app such as PARCRR, which will give you tools to be able to diagnose concussions if they have something that happens to them while playing sports. There are so many great tools out there. So we've talked about the be prepared, but now I got to move this conversation into getting healthy and sort of really get back into the journey that I had. And I started thinking about this. I said, wait a minute, I'm in the hospitality industry. I mean, this couldn't be the issue that I'm having right now. I mean, it couldn't be that we eat too much and we have a stressful job. And oh yeah, that we don't, I don't blame this industry. I take full responsibility and ownership of what's happened to me. And that's really important to understand, because it's really easy to point a finger at any industry to say, well, that did it to me. No, I earned this stroke. Don't like to say that, but I did. And what I want you to understand in the next few weeks is that Liz will be going over a lot of amazing stuff, including stress, including sleep, including food, which I'm going to cover in a few minutes as well, to keep you healthy, to keep you balanced. It's a matter of ownership. For me, maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have had pictures like this taken if I had taken ownership of my health sooner. In fact, I think you can see the gerbil coming out of one of my cheeks. Can you believe that picture? I mean, really? So to me, I'm a foodie. I always was. I still am. But to me, it was a three-step process, this journey, because I would eat poorly and I'd get fat. How fat? I will tell you in a second. I would then diet, which I found out later is the wrong thing to do, and lose the weight. And of course, the third step's pretty clear: repeat as necessary, which would be what, every 6 months, every year, after every holiday. It was a recipe for, well, for a stroke to happen, which it did. So how much did I weigh? Let me take you through the years on this one. In college, and I was fat as a kid. I actually had already lost 50 pounds at this point, but I was 170 pounds. I'm 6 feet tall. Still consider myself fat. And if you've ever been overweight, you know that once you're overweight, you always look at yourself that way. And that's a really, really tough thing that you have to get past. By the time I got married, I was up to 215 and still didn't think I was that much heavier. And then by the early 90s, in a lot of buffets in the meeting industry, at 250, just wait, that's way too much. I found a diet that worked in the late 90s, the Zone, which I realized later probably didn't do me any justice. I got down to 220 for a day or two at least. And then by 10 years later, by my 50th birthday, up to 282 pounds. That's not good. A couple years later, though, because I had that scare from my doctor saying, you really should lose weight. He actually gave me a diet to be on. He said it was the carrot and cabbage diet, which is when I knew I needed a new doctor, because anybody who's going to recommend something like that clearly has no idea about nutrition. And one thing to note, and I've been reading about this and understanding this for a number of years now, is the last person you want to ask about nutrition is your doctor, because they don't get that knowledge. They know all the medical stuff. But what I want for me is to be able to take care of our health naturally without having to take more and more medications. The problem, though, even though I started losing weight, is that it started creeping back up. So in June of 2014, I'm 270 pounds. So I got to tell you what I did, but I got to ask you a secret, okay? You got to promise not to tell anybody, because this really is very personal. How I took care of this is by eating Twinkies and Pop-Tarts. But you have to eat them in the right order. You see, you can't eat the Pop-Tarts first because the Twinkies will sort of get all that cream in there. You're not believing me, are you? Yeah, that's probably not surprising. I'm not believing it either. But in a way, that's what we wanted to think about how we ate. That we could eat the things that we always did, what are called the standard American diet, and we can get away with, oh, I'll exercise a little bit and take it off. Hey, gang, it doesn't work that way. And I can pinpoint the date. It was June 11, 2014, and I'm on my way to a meeting industry, a speaking event for the Connect Association. And I had what I realized at that time was the last sandwich at an airport, and it looked just like that. Probably wasn't even as healthy as that. I'm feeling lethargic and I'm feeling sluggish. So on my phone, I'm waiting for the flight, and up pops this advertisement for a book, VB6, Vegan Before 6. Mark Bittman is an author my wife and I followed for years, and he had just written this book probably about a year before. My wife had actually seen it and mentioned it to me, and I go, really, vegan? I can't do that. But you know, when you're right for a message, that resonates. Well, I called my wife right there, probably texted her, and I said, I just saw this book. Would you follow this with me? And of course, she was all in because she's the smart one of the couple. And the journey started that all of a sudden now, I was able to lose the weight. And remember, 282 pounds. So as you lose weight, it comes with feedback loops. The feedback that it comes with typically from your friends. So a month or so after being on a good weight loss program, you're going to see your friends somewhere, pre-pandemic days, obviously, and they'll say something like, you look different. You know, did you cut your hair? You know, they may not have noticed you've lost some weight, but clearly there's something that's visually changed. And a few months later, you see that same friend, and all of a sudden, you look great. How did you lose all the weight? That's amazing. And then maybe bring into 2020, they see you on Zoom at a meeting. They go, you feeling okay? You don't have a curable disease, do you? And that third stage of weight loss is really important, because at that point, you know you've made a difference in terms of what you're doing with your body. But I got to tell you another secret. There's a fourth stage to this. And this is when you know you've succeeded. The fourth stage happens when that same friend sees you a few months, maybe 6 months later, and says that. Oh my God! How much longer do you have? Really? Have you taken care of all the stuff that you need to do for your funeral? I mean, who else knows that you? They don't believe you. All of a sudden, pounds start to drip off when you're eating properly, and nobody else can understand what's happening to you. Are you sure you're healthy? What finally worked, the science, was the evidence. I did an awful lot of research after the stroke, and I've gone to what's called a whole food plant-based diet, because quite frankly, and I think I had that acronym backwards. I just realized that, oops, maybe it's the stroke. I'll blame it on the stroke. Okay. So, you know, you start eating a certain way, and you start eating a vegan approach, 2 meals a day, and then 1 meal eating what you want. I knew that was healthier. What I didn't necessarily realize was it wasn't all the way, and I needed to actually consider that. But moving into plants, and I'm now very much aligned with an organization called Plant Powered Metro New York, where we help people on their journeys wherever they are. But there again, we merge this conversation with the technology conversation, and there's great data and great resources out there. I'd love for you to check out PCRM, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and all the great work they do, including their exam room podcast. T. Colin Campbell, who is one of the founders of the China study, which clearly talked about the benefit, not just for weight loss, but for reversing heart disease and reversing type 2 diabetes, which I think are two of the largest killers that we have on our planet right now, through what the work that PCRM is doing. And then nutritionfacts.org, Dr. Michael Greger, who puts new videos out every day, just talking about the science. Because guess what, gang? If you're anything like me, there's an awful lot of noise that we were confronting online to try to figure out what we need to do with our health. And what we found out very clearly is most of that noise was about marketing and sales, trying to sell you into a particular style of eating that's not going to work long term. In fact, I'm a geek. I want apps. I want tools. Download Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen in terms of what to eat on a whole food plant-based diet. For years, I've been using Happy Cow when I get into a city to find the vegetarian and the plant-friendly restaurants that are out there. You go to a supermarket, you scan the label, and Food UK will tell you how good or not good is all the ingredients on that particular label. And if you want to really do something in terms of long-term logging, Chronometer allows you to log everything you have and get a sense of the health components of it. What you doctors will talk about always, and it's not a perfect tool, is BMI, body mass index. Let's just take a look at something right here. A healthy BMI is under 25. Obesity is 30 or greater. And indeed, if you look at my BMI in the left corner or the left of that center image, it was 38.2. Now, what this app doesn't tell you is if you're at 40 or higher, you're not just obese, you're morbidly obese. Those words probably would have resonated very heavily with me if I had heard them about myself. By the way, I'm proud about this one because this morning I was on the scale at 175. That's 107 pounds, just so we're clear about this. And my BMI is now in the healthy range. I am so committed to this approach. And I want to give you 7 words to remember. Michael Pollock wrote a wonderful book 10 years ago called In Defense of Food. And I don't know if anybody has summed up the approach to eating healthy in as few words as possible. If you've been with me on some of my sessions, we talk about oftentimes 6-word stories, how we can tell our story in as few as number of words as possible to be able to resonate and be retained by people. The 7-word story to remember is pretty straightforward. Eat food. That's whole food, not processed food. Not too much, mostly plants. Pretty cool, pretty straightforward. By the way, in this time of COVID, when everyone's gaining weight, we've done a little bit of tweaking here or there. I've lost an extra 40 pounds in the past 9 months. So you can do everything right, right? February 2018, I'm at a meeting event speaking, and session goes great. Next morning, go to work out, and all of a sudden I feel short of breath. That's weird. Do I have a cold? Do I have allergies? And I couldn't exercise. Kind of scared. Once you have a stroke, we won't even get into the mental issues that happen once that happens to you. You have some sort of life-changing event like that. But I went to a cardiologist. And he goes, you're doing everything right. You've lost a ton of weight, but let's do complete tests. And the first 2 tests he did that day, an EKG and a sonogram, he goes, your heart is fine, but come back in a couple of weeks. We'll do a nuclear stress test. This is where irony comes in. I worked for 5 years running the meetings of the Society of Nuclear Medicine. I go, well, nuclear stress test, that's going to be a piece of cake for me to pass. And when I got back into his office after the test, he sent me to the emergency room. He said, have you heard about the Widowmaker? I said, maybe in a movie, but I'm not sure what you're talking about, Doc. He said, the left descending artery is called the Widowmaker. If that closes, you're dead. So you're going to the emergency room, you're undergoing a heart procedure. And after waiting about 14 hours and having the procedure, I'm lying on the table, I'm awake during the entire time. The doctor, Dr. Kaplan, goes, okay, I have bad news for you. He said, your Widowmaker is blocked 99%. He said, the problem is on the right side, you have blockage of 80%. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to take care of them both. I said, Doc, I'm not going anywhere right now. Do what you can. And believe it or not, within 20 minutes, 2 stents later, wish I didn't have to have the stents in there. Now my arteries are open. And the next morning, my cardiologist comes in and he's just shaking his head. He goes, I don't get you. He said, you have like more lives than a cat. He goes, do you want to see what your arteries look like? And showed me a picture that was far worse than the one I'm showing right now. He said, your artery looked like a wet straw that was dangling by a thread. At that point, we made a commitment. Vegan before 6. Okay, now it's whole food, plant-based 24/7. We've reversed the heart disease. We're at a point where literally 107 pounds later, healthy, I can be back in this industry. I can do what I love to do, share this information. So I ask you, I plead that you move a step forward for your own health. Be prepared. Get healthy. And if you ever need any help on a journey like this, I'm sure Liz will say the same thing, but I am happy to be there for you. I just think it's critical. So Jennifer, I want to turn it over to you, see if anybody has any questions and be able to help people out any way that we can.
Thank you, Jim. That was so powerful. Like you said, does anyone have any questions? You can unmute yourself. We still have, we're a little bit over, but again, I know sometimes questions, you know, even if you want to ask it privately, his contact information is there. But again, we just feel it's really important to share the information because we're all in the same industry. And, you know, you might not look heavy, but you don't know what your heart looks like either. So just make sure.
And Jen, we've talked about this, that it's not happening just to folks who are heavy. People who are very thin also have underlying conditions. And it's important to, again, going to the doctor, making sure they understand that, but eating for life. Again, I'm a foodie. And to me, no better joy than having a great, rich meal. And guess what? There's no better joy right now, having a delicious, healthy meal. We've learned how to change and adapt. And that's a huge part of the journey and the process, and one that I wish I had learned 30 years ago, but guess what? I probably wouldn't have been ready for it 30 years ago, because to some extent, we all have to go through our own unique approach to how we do things.
Absolutely. We do have some comments in the chat. This was great, powerful story. Thank you for sharing. Jim, so grateful you survived so you could share with everyone. Penton Walker Foundation, founded by a fellow meeting planner, provides free.
Oh my gosh, Diane, that's awesome. I never even knew that.
Thank you. And again, I don't want to make this about me, but I was 47 when I had my heart attack. And again, this is so important to me to be able to share Jim's story. And I know there's a lot of people out there with their own story, but just, it's the simple things, just get healthy. I see there's some more comments, but next week, same time, Liz Cohen, she's a former hospitality professional who is now a health coach, will talk, and she's going to be the guest speaker for the other 4 weeks, and she's going to go into more detail and what we can do while we're working from home, and being able to change our life, and food and health and sleep, I know is so important as well. So thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. Anyone, again, Jim, do you want to put up your slide with your contact information?
Would be happy to do so, because anyone who wants to reach out to me, just send me a note, jspellos@meeting-u.com. Don't forget the hyphen, you'll never get through to me otherwise. And just anything. And just in terms of hearing the story again, if you want the PowerPoint, just want to make sure that we get you moving on a journey that moves you even healthier. That's what's important.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, everyone.